Spice and Jasmine had a rocky relationship from the beginning, but no one could have predicted that it would all blow up in such a heated confrontation. This wasn't about a casual argument gone wrong. What viewers didn't realize at first was that this moment was the culmination of a much bigger, deeply rooted issue that had been simmering for months. You won't believe why Spice jumped Jasmine during that shocking moment on the show. It left everyone talking, and people couldn't get enough of the drama that unfolded before their eyes. To completely comprehend why Spice jumped Jasmine during that explosive moment on the show, we must first look at the main players. The underlying tension that developed long before the camera started rolling is what makes this story unique. When the truth about what happened before that moment is revealed, you'll be shocked. This drama took an unexpected turn, and it's about betrayal, hurt feelings, and unresolved conflicts that went far beyond anything viewers could have imagined. Drama Rashida Spice and Jasmine Rashida, who is frequently regarded as the voice of reason, have been trying to make sense of everything while they are in the middle of the chaos. However, recently, she broke her silence and revealed what actually happened behind the scenes, revealing a situation that had been kept hidden for far too long. Spice, whose fiery temper is practically legendary and who is known for her unapologetic persona, has never been one to back down from confrontation, whether it be verbal or physical. On the other hand, we have Jasmine, whose relationship with the group had always been a little shaky. She had her issues with the cast, who were frequently caught in the crossfire of drama and tension. While some were sympathetic toward her, others were not overly thrilled about her presence, especially as the tensions between her and Spice continued to escalate. Her intensity and no-holds-barred attitude have earned her a reputation as a force to be reckoned with, and this moment with Jasmine was no exception. Jasmine had previously been on thin ice with the group, which made it easier for her to be pushed to the brink. Now, let's talk about that shocking moment from the show when Spice and Jasmine's argument turned violent. Fans were left in complete shock, wondering how things went from just words to a full-fledged physical altercation. Online, there was a lot of speculation as everyone tried to piece together how it all happened. Was it an angry outburst, a misunderstanding, or something more profound? The public was eager to know, and Rashida emerged to reveal. She is the one who knows the truth about the altercation when the cameras weren't rolling, and she's going to correct the record. What was initially thought to be a random outburst is now understood to be the result of years of tension, personal struggle, and built-up resentment between these two women. So what exactly happened? How did it go from a heated conversation to physical chaos? And why did Spice react in such a drastic way? Rashida's revelation will fill in the blanks, and I promise you, Spice and Jasmine's relationship was far from smooth. It was a powder keg of unresolved issues, and each encounter between them added fuel to the fire. This wasn't the first time the two women had clashed, but what made this particular altercation stand out was that it had been simmering for months or even years beneath the surface. Spice, with her bold and unapologetic personality, had no problem. We don't want to miss it. Her fiery temperament wasn't something everyone could handle, and Jasmine, who had a complicated past within the group, was no exception. She wasn't just dealing with Spice, she was also trying to prove herself in a group where trust was lacking. She's always been the type to speak her mind, even when it upset people, and she's not afraid to step on toes if it means staying true to herself. The interesting part is that, although the show may have presented their arguments as isolated incidents, there was much more going on underneath the surface. The two women had clashed several times during the show, frequently over issues that went far beyond small arguments or miscommunications. Spice, a fierce woman, had been especially outspoken about her frustrations with Jasmine, and Jasmine's attempts to negotiate the dynamics of the group frequently made things worse. The problem is that this wasn't just a random outburst. It wasn't one of those spontaneous situations that went out of control. Rather, it was the result of years of accumulated resentment, passive-aggressive remarks, and unresolved tensions. Spice's patience had grown weary, and Jasmine, who had already been under pressure from her own struggles in the group, had no idea what the tension between the two would be. And one wanted to keep things simple and unfiltered while the other struggled to find her place in a group that was constantly changing allegiances. The story is different from anything viewers have seen before because it wasn't just about one incident. Rather, it was the result of everything that had been going on behind the scenes. It's a perfect storm of personal struggles, misunderstandings, and old wounds that finally exploded. Spice didn't just snap in the heat of the moment. She had reached her breaking point, and all of this culminated on that fateful day when the altercation went from words to physical violence. You won't believe the truth when it comes out. Rashida, who has been around the block in the world of drama and conflict, was in the perfect position to shed light on what really went down between Spice and Jasmine as a woman who's witnessed many heated moments firsthand. Rashida has always been the one to drop the truth when everyone else is caught up in the chaos of gossip, and this time she's revealing what really happened between Spice and Jasmine. The events leading up to that shocking altercation between Spice and Jasmine Rashida make it clear that Spice wasn't just having a random outburst. In fact, Jasmine had been stirring things up long before that famous moment on the show. Spice had attempted to remain composed and ignore the jabs and disrespect that kept coming her way, but it got to be too much. Spice's patience had been tried for months as Jasmine kept pushing her buttons, testing her patience, and disrespecting her in subtle but scathing ways. And here's the most outrageous part. It wasn't a one-time incident. The tension between the two had been building for a while. Rashida discloses that there had been several verbal jabs, snide remarks, and disrespectful remarks from Jasmine that intensified the situation. Spice attempted to maintain her level of composure because she is accustomed to the drama that comes with being in the spotlight, but this time Jasmine's antics had gone too far, and she was unable to contain her anger any longer. You won't believe what Jasmine said behind closed doors that drove Spice over the edge. Rashida reveals things that fans were unaware of. Jasmine wasn't just talking about Spice on camera. The comments behind the scenes were equally as brutal and disrespectful. Spice's rage was rooted in months of tension and years of disrespect. Jasmine had crossed multiple lines and had reached her limit. It was like a pressure cooker that had finally exploded. Spice's pride had been damaged, her self-respect and boundaries had been tested, and when Jasmine crossed that last line, it set off the explosion that was broadcast on television. The events leading up to this point were not limited to a single altercation. They included everything that had transpired behind closed doors that viewers were unaware of. Spice had been patient, but patience only lasts so long before it turns into frustration, and once that frustration reached its peak, there was no turning back from Rashida's breakdown, which exposed a whole new side to the altercation that fans were unaware of. What's even more shocking is how the entire incident transpired behind the scenes, with Jasmine's actions serving as the catalyst for the final confrontation. The moment when Spice jumped Jasmine was shocking, leaving everyone stunned. What had begun as a verbal sparring match between the two women turned into an unexpected outburst of physical violence, leaving the cast, who were already accustomed to the tension between them. What actually happened was a slap, a push, and a full-on fight. The truth is that all of that Spice's emotions, which had been suppressed for so long, exploded in an instant. 1 second, Jasmine was speaking, hurling her words like daggers, and the next, Spice's hands were on her. The violence wasn't something that had been anticipated because, after all, viewers had only ever witnessed verbal altercations between them before. Spice is no stranger to drama, and her actions weren't just a quick outburst. They were the result of months of provocation and verbal insults that had worn down her patience. The intensity of the moment was palpable, and you could feel the anger in the air. Spice appeared to have lost all control. It wasn't just a slap or a push. It was a release of everything she had been holding in her frustration, her hurt, and her anger. It wasn't just a brief attack. The scene was chaotic, and Spice's aggression was overwhelming. No one anticipated Spice's reaction, which Rashida reveals is shocking. Despite the increasing tension and the frequent jabs, it wasn't just about the words anymore. It was the accumulation of months or even years of disrespect. Jasmine had been making Spice feel small and unimportant, and Spice had tried to remain composed, but in that moment she couldn't take it any longer. The disrespect was simply too much, and Spice's reaction was an uncontrollable emotional explosion. The incident wasn't just a physical altercation, it was the culmination of everything that had been simmering for so long. Spice wasn't just defending herself in the moment. She was reclaiming her dignity and sending a message to Jasmine that enough was enough. Spice had always been tough, but no one expected her to go to this extreme. It was a full-on reaction to years of built-up animosity, and it left everyone in shock. Not only upended Spice and Jasmine's dynamic, but it also sent shockwaves through the entire cast. The drama between the two women was intense, and the real chaos ensued afterward. How did the rest of the cast react to what had happened? The answers were as complex as the situation itself. Some were so taken aback by the outburst that they were unable to respond, while others were prepared to intervene and defuse the situation. But it was too late for Rashida, who typically acts as the voice of reason and tries to keep things under control. Was left completely stunned. She had witnessed the simmering tension between Jasmine and Spice, but she never imagined things would get this out of hand. Rashida's shock was palpable. She had attempted to mediate the innumerable arguments between the two previously, but what transpired was unimaginable. How could anyone have predicted Spice's explosive reaction for someone like Rashida, who is known for her cool-headedness? This moment was a game changer. The fallout wasn't just about Spice and Jasmine's feud, it had reverberated throughout Suddenly, the entire cast was split into factions, and the drama wasn't just about the two women. Spice's actions had caused a rift between everyone else. Some people supported Spice because they understood how frustrated she was and how months of disrespect had led to this explosive moment. They felt that Spice had every right to defend herself and had simply reached her breaking point. Others, on the other hand, supported Jasmine because they thought that violence was never the solution and that Spice had gone too far. Extent that justified physical aggression. But here's where it gets interesting. Several cast members were caught in the middle of the conflict, unsure of whether to support or condemn Spice's actions. The group dynamic became tense and awkward, with alliances being tested and lines being drawn. It was evident that the altercation had altered the dynamics within the group, and nobody knew how to proceed. The most bizarre part was when the cast attempted to piece everything together. Everyone was talking, but no one was really listening. The confrontation between Spice and Jasmine had sparked a much bigger issue that threatened to split the group in ways no one had anticipated. At the core of it all, however, was the question of loyalty. Who would support whom? And how would the fallout affect the relationship within the cast going forward? After the dust settled, their reactions were as varied as the personalities in the group. Some were quietly processing the events, while others were loudly debating whose side they were on. Rashida, who is renowned for her level-headed approach to drama, had a perspective on the altercation between Spice and Jasmine that wasn't about making excuses or playing it safe. She didn't hold back in sharing why, in her opinion, this fight was not just inevitable but necessary. Rashida understood the buildup that had led to the explosive moment, and even though she acknowledged that Spice's actions were extreme, she stood by the fact that they were the result of. Rashida's perspective on the matter was direct and honest. She didn't sugarcoat the truth or attempt to make it seem more acceptable for the audience. In her opinion, Spice wasn't acting out of pure rage. Rather, this was the culmination of everything that had been building for months, including all the disrespect, verbal attacks, and jabs that Jasmine had thrown over time. Spice had attempted to remain calm and act like the bigger person, but Jasmine's actions had crossed the line too many times. The story is different because, according to Rashida, Spice didn't react out of anger. Rather, she reacted out of self-defense and self-respect. Spice had given Jasmine more than enough opportunities to stop pushing her buttons. Spice had tried to remain calm and keep the peace for the benefit of the group, but Jasmine's persistent provocations had worn her down. Spice had endured the insults and disrespect for as long as she could, but in that moment she reached her breaking point. It wasn't about who started the fight. Rather, it was about who had been pushed too far. Rashida Ever, the realist, makes sure the audience understands that while physical violence is never the ideal solution, she recognizes why Spice did what she did. Spice wasn't just angry with Jasmine, she was angry with the years of built-up insults, the constant attempts to undermine her, and the lack of respect that Jasmine had shown her time and time again that led to this disagreement. Down she acknowledges, but you can't deny that Spice was just tired of it and felt compelled to act for Rashida. The altercation wasn't about a single incident. Rather, it was about the long-standing disrespect that had developed between the two women. In this explanation, Rashida doesn't attempt to paint Spice as a hero or paint Jasmine in a negative light. Rather, she presents the facts that Spice's actions were extreme, but the product of months of tension and frustration in Jasmine's. Rashida doesn't apologize for Spice's actions in that moment. Instead, she explains why they occurred. Even if people disagree with the execution, Rashida thinks it's important for them to understand why Spice did what she did. Her viewpoint is refreshing in a world where people frequently try to play the victim or act as though they have no responsibility in the matter. She acknowledges that things got out of hand, but she doesn't shy away from the fact that whether you agree with Spice's handling of the situation or not, her explanation highlights the emotional toll of constant verbal attacks and how eventually something has to give. Spice's reaction was based on self-preservation. It wasn't about attacking Jasmine, but rather about defending herself and reclaiming her respect for Rashida. The fight may have been messy, but it was also a wake-up call. It was a reminder that disrespect has consequences, and sometimes people will snap when pushed too far. In doing so, she provides the audience with a more nuanced perspective on the Spice-Jasmine altercation. It wasn't a random outburst. Rather, it was the culmination of months of verbal abuse, and at that moment, Spice was merely defending herself. Following the altercation between Spice and Jasmine, everyone's first concern was how Jasmine would react. Would she acknowledge the escalation and apologize, or would she stand by her actions? The answer arrived swiftly, and it wasn't what anyone anticipated. Instead of expressing regret or renouncing her position, Jasmine remained defensive. She didn't appear to be moved by what had happened, and instead, she stood her ground. This wasn't exactly the public show of weakness that many were hoping for, and it only served to stoke the drama. Jasmine's refusal to back down only made things worse. She wasn't immediately sorry or even willing to admit her part in the escalation of tensions between herself and Spice. Instead, she started to change the story, portraying herself as the. But here's where it gets interesting. Jasmine's response wasn't exactly what people expected. She didn't back down or apologize right away, which only served to fuel the fire. The victim in the scenario claimed that Spice had gone too far, painting herself as someone who had been wronged. This claim was an attempt to reframe the altercation, giving Jasmine the opportunity to regain some control over the story and possibly her public image. But here's where it got crazy. Jasmine began to change the narrative by claiming that Spice had gone too far. As the dust settled and Rashida's revelation became public knowledge, the public was left to process what had happened. Fans, social media users, and viewers were all buzzing with opinions, and the reaction was divided. Many sided with Spice, understanding that her actions were the result of long-standing tension and disrespect from Jasmine. However, this was an unexpected move that left many fans confused instead of acknowledging that her actions might have contributed to the situation. She dug in her heels, which only escalated the already intense drama. Thought Spice had every right to defend herself, especially after months of verbal abuse from Jasmine's supporters, who saw her as someone who had reached her breaking point and praised her for finally speaking up. However, some fans felt that Spice had gone too far, believing that her physical response was an overreaction and that, regardless of the provocation, violence shouldn't have been the solution. These fans criticized Spice for allowing her emotions to control her and felt that Jasmine should be held accountable for the way the situation escalated. The way the drama played out in front of the world made it even more intense. It was no longer just a fight between two women, it was a spectacle for the entire world to watch and judge. Social media exacerbated the situation, with fans discussing and analyzing every detail, creating an environment where there was no escaping the public scrutiny. The argument was now not just about who was right or wrong, but also about what people felt was the appropriate response in moments of conflict. As the conversation progressed, opinions were flying everywhere. Spice's supporters became more vocal, rallying around the idea that she had been pushed too far and finally stood up for herself. In contrast, Jasmine's supporters attempted to focus on the physicality of the altercation, claiming that Spice's actions were unjustified. The narrative swiftly turned into a discussion about respecting boundaries and knowing when it's appropriate to defend oneself, which left the audience wondering what would happen next. The fight between Spice and Jasmine wasn't just a simple altercation, it was a turning point in their rivalry, and it's far from over. Fans are left wondering whether this will end peacefully or if the two women will continue to clash on and off the show. But one thing is for sure, this fight isn't just a passing moment. Rashida's revelation of the true nature of what happened behind the scenes has only added more fuel to the fire. Spice's defense may feel vindicated, but the tension with Jasmine will likely remain unresolved for the time being. Jasmine, on the other hand, has changed the narrative, but her refusal to apologize or back down may continue to sour the relationship with both Spice and the public. Stay tuned because this story is far from finished, and the drama is about to take another unexpected turn as the aftershocks of this altercation are likely to last for a long time. The pot and their rivalry may intensify further as the show goes on, whether it takes the form of more conflicts, surprising alliances, or startling revelations. One thing is certain, the drama involving these two women is far from over, as evidenced by the public's response to Rashida's revelations and the unresolved tension between Spice and Jasmine all suggest further strife. In the future,